Okay, growing up, I really got into computers, and this will probably age myself. But I remember being in elementary school and my dad getting a subscription to Family Computing. And he said, Rodney, do you want it? You want this? I just kind of ordered these magazines. People went door to door, helping people out, getting magazines, and he got Family Computing because computers were starting to become household items at the time. And so I began to read that and began to get excited about the possibilities I could do with a home computer. And so I convinced the family to go ahead and get a personal computer. And I said, for Christmas, I said, that's all I want. Let's go out and get one. So we did. And then pretty soon, as I got more and more into computers, I began looking up careers in computing and seeing what can I do? What kind of future can I have in computers? And I knew that I love math. I love computers. Programming, not so much. I kind of read it at the time. Programming, not so much. It's not like it is today. But I decided that making computers would be a blast. It'd be fun, right? And so I began to look up career paths going into computers, and I decided that maybe the best thing for me would be an electronics engineer. And I went into that because that's the people who would be making the computers. And so I remember a good friend of mine, he's still a good friend of mine today. We were talking one day, and this was later on, because I had this plan. I'm one to plan out things years in advance. And so I still had this dream of being an electronics engineer well into high school. And so we were talking one day, me and my good friend, about what we wanted to do in the future. And I had shared what I wanted to do ever since I was a kid, to be an electronics engineer. And I remember he asked me, what do they do? What does that do? And I said, well, they make computers. And I'll never forget, he gave me this look. And he looked right at me and said, do you really think that you can do that? And I remember the way I felt and my mindset from then on. And I began to doubt myself. So today on the podcast, we're going to look at millennials and entrepreneurship. We're going to continue that series, and we're going to look at especially the topic of overcoming parents and naysayers. Welcome to the Rodney podcast. Okay, so if you listen to the first pod of this series, Millennials and Entrepreneurship, you will hear me mention that college may not be what it used to be. And I remember saying in that podcast that this was probably a topic I would come back to because it's a hot button topic. And, I'm a person that did go to college. I did get a bachelor's. I did get a master's. I'm one that maybe one day will get a PhD. So it may sound like I'm talking on both sides, but I think you have to examine this with an open mind. But one of the most popular person, and I mentioned him before, is Gary Vee. Gary Vee is probably the most popular spokesman about this. He was terrible at school, but he had this entrepreneurship in his veins, even as a young kid. He tells stories about selling candy bars at school. I think he had a lemonade stand. I'm not sure about that one, but I know one of my favorite ones of his is, going to somebody's yard, picking the flowers, knocking on the door, and selling the flowers back to the people. No wonder he's a successful businessman and entrepreneur right now, as far as and even as a social media outlet person. So the question becomes, should you go to college? And the answer I have for that is, it depends. It depends. Are you wanting to be a professional, like maybe a doctor, lawyer, dentist? Because those professions like that, you need to have the education. There's no other way to get into it. But if not, my question is, in order to answer this question, should you go to college, is, do you have a plan? Do you have a plan? Like, what do you want to do? Do you know what you want to do? If you don't know what you want to do you have a plan to take general ed and then have it figured out by year 3 or 4? Or whenever you're done with general ed? Do you have a plan of how you're going to pay for it? Is it a status thing to where you're going to pay a lot of money for a school just because of the school's name, and then you're not sure what you want to do? Now, A lot of times, people ask about college and the parents come into play because they want you to go. And I would say they would be right if you're simply lazy. Now, what do I mean by that? If you don't want to go, it's because you're lazy and you want to sit around and do nothing. That is not a plan. That is not the right thing to do. And so I believe that the whole thing of college or work makes sense. But then what if you want to travel? Well, if you have the funds, if you've been working since high school and you have the means to do it and you have the funds, or if your parents, agree to maybe give you half or whatever, I believe that's fine by me. I think a lot of parents would have loved the opportunity and the chance to do that at that age as well. Safety is, of course, a major concern as well. But yes, travel the world for a year. If you have a plan and you want to stick to it, and you're one of those people that just won't get lost in just doing nothing, then that makes sense. But even if you are a person that gets lost into doing nothing, probably going to college would not be a good idea. I was telling somebody the other day, all it is especially the junior ones, especially the ones in our county, the community college, it's just high school without having to go to class. So it takes a lot of self-discipline, and you have to know yourself, right? But it also means, look, if you parents say you have to go to college or else the funds get cut off or kicked out or you have to go work, it also means that your dream of being an entrepreneur or whatever you want to do, you're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to grind without them. I mean, that means you may have to work a job or you work your entrepreneur plan. I talked about that, working a day job or working a night or whatever it may be. But when you're off, after a little bit of sleep, working on your business goals, working on your goals to build your dream takes a lot of work. You have to grind, right? Are you willing to do it without your parents by moving out and just eating ramen? I mean, sounds like a college student too, as well. But just moving in on somebody's couch, maybe somebody's basement. Homeless is not the way to go. So maybe you just need to work something out with your parents. But I believe that if you really understand yourself and have a plan, things will work out for you. I mean, you really have to understand who you are. If you love math, right? If you love math, then engineering makes sense. But if you hate it, then don't go and be an engineer. If you went through high school, hating school, not doing any work, really think about going to college and turning the switch on. Is that possible? Can you do that? What's the motivation to do that? So you have to take a really hard look at yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror and be honest, right? You're only talking to yourself. No need to fool yourself. Who are you? What are your values? What's your work ethic? And if you don't like any of those things, what can you do that can bring you success? How do you turn it around, right? Because otherwise, you'll go study to be an engineer and you'll waste your money. You'll waste your parents' money. You'll go into student debt just to never get a degree or to get a degree that you're not going to use. You have to take a look at yourself and say, what do I do well? What do I like to do? Are you simply just looking to get rich? Because that's a sure way to fail. Yes, money is nice. We all want to have money. We all want to be financially secure, right? But that is your main motivation. My hunch is that you will probably fail because you are not in love with what you do and you're not in love with your dream. I also say you must think differently, right? Now, I mentioned this kind of in the Millennials and Entrepreneurship when I talked about personal training. And the reason why I kind of brought up this alternative idea to personal training is because there's so many out there, so many personal trainers out there that you can get lost, right? That you may have to think of different ways, a non-traditional path, right? Even if you don't go to college, which seems to be the traditional path that especially parents are saying to go, I say this: if you're going to take a non-traditional path, don't think in traditional ways. Look at Amazon. Amazon, if you described it years ago, think of before it even came about. The person's idea about this is, hey, I'm going to use this internet to sell stuff, lots of it, but I don't own any of it, right? I mean, Amazon eventually got their own products, but basically they're selling stuff that's not their own. That's a business. Uber, Transportation company. We're going to be a transportation company, but we're not going to own any vehicles. Now, I know they're trying to do the self-driving vehicles. But again, they started with the idea of not owning any vehicles. This thing called technology. They were thinking in different ways. And both of these companies knew that technology was the key. That's what did it for them, was technology, right? And so this technology opens up so many doors and so many ideas that you have to be willing to brainstorm and think of non-traditional path, right? Don't think in traditional ways. Because, I mean, there will always be jobs out there like the post office, right? Good job, still a good job. But I will say that over the years that will change. Besides maybe going bankrupt, only reason why it probably still exists is because of the government supplying the funds. But what are you mailing besides goods? And that may change as well, especially with companies like FedEx, UPS, and other companies to compete with them, right? So, with this whole idea of being successful and being an entrepreneur and overcoming naysayers and overcoming parents, what is stopping us? And I already talked about the parents, right? And one thing about them, they just want the best. They want the best for their kids. There's some fear in raising kids and then them not turning out the way you think they should, or them not being successful, right? Sometimes it reflects on them. They feel that it reflects on them. I'm a parent as well, so I'm speaking from experience. But then what is stopping you as far as friends and colleagues, the naysayers, the haters, right? First, I would say don't let them change your mindset. Once you doubt yourself, you're going to fail. Once you say to yourself, I cannot do this, you are going to fail. That's what happened to me, right? That's what happened to me. I kind of doubted myself after my friend asked that question, right? But those people who are saying that usually have low self-esteem, right? Or they have the wrong mindset themselves. And so they're going to project that onto you. And the idea is this, and this is very important. Listen to what they're saying, not how they are saying it. I'll repeat that. Listen to what they are saying, not how they are saying it. Look at my friend, right? He asked me if I think I can do engineering, right? Do you really think you can do that? This was his quote, right? It's the way he said it. But that's how he said it, right? Threw off my mindset, okay? But what he was really saying, the what, not the how, the what. If I really took time and stepped back and said, okay, what is he saying? He's saying this. That seems extremely hard, Rodney. Can you work that hard and grind that hard to be successful? Right? Looking back, the answer to that was no. I had hit physics. I loved math. I hit physics and decided it was easier just to change majors. Ironically, I went to business right after that. Then math, then communication, and I have a bachelor's in communication as an FYI. But again, listening to what they're saying, not how. Recently I had a friend, he sells programs, right? Fitness programs, young person. And he got some feedback and some hate, right? And the idea is, look, you're taking people's money. You don't look the part. You're too young. You don't have experience. Who in their right mind is going to give you money when you're that young, right? And that's the how they were saying it. Now, here is the what. The what is this. What experience can you bring to the table that would bring value to other people, especially since your physique is not as massive or as shredded as many other people that we may see? Now, the how it was said is pure hate, right? Is it somebody being a hater, right? But the what behind the hate is a question that you must be prepared to answer. You have to be prepared to answer that. You have to be prepared to answer. And I know the big thing is don't answer your haters. And I understand in context, yes. But to yourself, you have to say, okay, here's some hate. Here's what they're saying to me, right? But let me answer that. Let me examine what they're saying. And let me just think of the what. What are they saying? I mean, the what may even be to themselves saying like, boy, I can't do that. I'm jealous, right? And then I can analyze that and say, okay, how can I help this person? Because they obviously need help because they are hitting on me because of jealousy. But a lot of times there's something behind the how that we have to examine and be prepared to answer. So what's the moral of the story? Don't let anybody change your mindset, but always have a well thought out, non-emotional answer to objections, because that will help you grow. I told this to aspiring real estate agents who are about 25 or even under, and I just say, because I had to go through it too. I had to say, look, okay, it's a big purchase, probably the biggest purchase a lot of people make. And they're going to look at you and see how young you are. You have to convince them, why am I going to use you? There's tons of answers for that. And if anybody is interested in going to real estate and have that question, I can help them answer that. But that's what you have to do. You have to have an answer to that. If not to the haters, then to yourself. So let me just leave you with this, some tips to overcome parents and naysayers. And I want to continue this talk in this series and continue to go further in this. But here are some tips. Okay, first, create a plan. I mentioned that before, right? Create a plan. Maybe a few variations are backups to the plan. So if your original idea doesn't go through, you have a backup. You can say, okay, let me switch it up real quick, right? That's the most important thing. Do not go into this without a plan. Number two, stay true to who you are. Be 100% honest with yourself. Don't go and be an engineer if you hate math or physics. To my defense, I didn't exactly know that physics was such a huge part of electronics engineering. Next, be prepared for fallout from friends, family, peers, but stay true to yourself, right? Be prepared to stand up and say, you know what? I have a thought out plan. This is what I want to do, and I need to stay true to that. If you don't have a plan, then I would say that you're doomed already. Right? Next one, be ready to do anything for your goal. Even working the job while you create your entrepreneurship, even if you have to move to somebody's sofa, even if you have to eat ramen, right? You have to do what you need to do if you want to live your dream and make it work. And lastly, enjoy what you do, whatever it may be. And I said this in the last one too, and this is always what I go to, enjoy what you do. And I learned that, it took me years to learn that, to enjoy what you do. And trust me, it feels really good. So with that, Millennials in Entrepreneurship, Overcoming Parents and Naysayers. And I want to thank everybody for joining me. I appreciate all the feedback and comments you can give me for this. I hope to have a few young entrepreneurs as guests soon. And this is the Rodney podcast. Thank you guys, and join me in the next one.